So I remember being in grade 8, learning how to snowboard with my school. We were on this 2-day field trip, and on the second day, I was starting to get the hang of turning back and forth on my board. And on this one particular run, I remember seeing my friends a little ways down the hill and thinking, this is a great opportunity to get them. And so I got some speed up as I turned straight down the hill. And now my plan was, I'm going to hit the brakes real hard just as I get close to them and send this wave of snow over them. It'll be amazing. They'll get all wet and I'll laugh and I'll be like some hero. It'll be amazing. What actually happened was, as I began to pick up speed, I actually wasn't very comfortable yet taking on such a quick pace. And as I went to turn onto my heel edge, what actually happened is I turned onto my toe edge, face planting right into the snow, right into my friends. And it just was not a good scene. Maybe you have a similar experience. But we all go through these seasons of life that are kind of just like that story, where we're going really fast in life, where the pace at which we're running is just so crazy. And we have all these plans of what we think we're going to do, but because of the speed that we're going at and the discomfort and the lack of control that comes with that, we end up just headed for disaster. Maybe you're a volunteer here today, and you probably work full time. You probably got a family, a wife, kids, girlfriend. You probably have hobbies, maybe sports that you're into. And on top of all this life, you also volunteer at your church, which is amazing. But the more things we add to our life, the busier and the more fast life goes. Maybe you're a pastor, a youth pastor or a youth leader in your church. And man, you got youth group once, maybe for some of you even twice a week. On top of that, you've got Sunday services that you're probably involved in. You've got maybe a little side hustle on the side to make some extra change. Maybe you've got a wife, maybe you've got some kids. Maybe you're coaching in a local school or a part of local community programs to help expand your ministry. The truth is, we just know that ministry is demanding, and with it comes a certain pace. And if you're not careful, you can get swept right up in it, and before you know it, you're flying down the hill uncontrollably, just headed for disaster. A couple years ago, I found myself in that very position. I was leading a youth ministry in a church. Our church had seen incredible amounts of growth. Our youth ministry had grown. And I just found myself suddenly running at a pace that was just uncontrollable. I was uncomfortable. I felt like I just was trying to tread water and couldn't keep my head above water. And that I was like drowning. Eventually I hit a place where I burnt out. And I actually had to take stress leave from my job. It was in that month that I was off that I began to really seek God and really dig into Scripture and just attempt to climb my way out of this hole that I had gotten into. And there's one particular set of verses in the Bible that I found so comforting in that season. I want to share them with you. It's found in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30. And it says this: Jesus is speaking, and he says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Burnt out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." Those verses set me on this road to recovery. And it wasn't long after that I read this other book by a guy named John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Now, a quick shameless plug for one of our partners for this weekend. You can actually go buy that book on Parasource Church Supplies if you like. Check it out. But in this book, John Mark Comer talks about these 4 spiritual disciplines that I want to share with you today. This is nothing that I've created out of my own think tank, but this is straight out of this book, and I would encourage you to check it out. But these 4 disciplines that are talked about in the book are very simple steps to help you just slow down in life. If you're finding that you're just running at this crazy pace in life, that you're like me, heading down that hill at an uncontrollable speed, these 4 disciplines just might be for you. So the first one is this. The first one is silence. Now I know that doesn't necessarily sound like any sort of spiritual discipline, but think about it. If you're a parent, maybe your kids sometimes just get out of control. They're screaming, they're not getting along, they're discontent, they're running around the house screaming like chickens with their heads cut off. And what do you do as a parent? You yell at the top of well, maybe you don't yell, maybe you're more controlled than that, but you say, "Quiet! Silence!" Sometimes I feel like in our lives, God needs to parent us like that. Our Heavenly Father sometimes just needs to be like, "Quiet, be quiet, silence." And silence is an awkward thing. Now I was just quiet there for about 3 seconds, and a lot of you were probably feeling like, was there a glitch in the video? What just happened there? But the truth of the matter is, when we encounter silence in our world, it's a really strange thing. For most of us, we probably live in the city or we live in town somewhere, and we don't actually even experience silence at any point in our day. But we see this modeled through Jesus' life in the Bible, where there are times in Jesus' ministry where he would actually retreat, and he had to go and just find silence for himself. And silence is something that a lot of us just do not simply consider in our world. But I want to encourage you to try this sometime. Just try to sit sometime for 5 minutes in silence. Take out your phone, turn on your timer, and set it for 5 minutes, and just sit there in silence in prayer and see what happens. It's difficult to just sit there in silence. And that's why they call them disciplines, right? So I'll encourage you, try silence. The second thing is solitude. Now silence and solitude, they kind of go hand in hand, because you can't really get silence without getting away and finding solitude. So they kind of go hand in hand, just like when Jesus would go away and find some solitude so that he could be quiet, so that he could be still before the Father, to pray, to listen. And that's what silence and solitude do for us. Now for the introverts in the room, you guys are probably stoked on this one. You're probably thinking, yes, he said silence, he said solitude, I love it. But for a lot of us, silence and solitude make us terribly uncomfortable. And so I want to encourage you, try it. Silence, solitude. The third one, the third discipline, is Sabbath. Now instantly when I say the word Sabbath, some of you are thinking that's antiquated language. Is he quoting the 10 Commandments? And the fact is, yes, I am quoting the 10 Commandments. In fact, one of the 10 Commandments is, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now before I talk too much on this, I want to just quickly explain that the word Sabbath, in its simplest original kind of form back in the day, means just simply stop. It means to stop. And that's what we're called to do. In the Bible it talks about how 6 days we're called to labor, to work hard, but on the 7th day, even God, when he was creating the world, rested. He stopped. And that's what the Sabbath is meant to do. It's like this built-in day where we get permission to cease, to stop everything that we have going on, whether it's work, whether it's side projects at home, whether it's mowing the grass, whether it's doing homework, even for you students. It is a call to just stop and to simply reflect, worship, be with God. Now, the Sabbath is something that I feel like as the church, we've traditionally treated it as an option, as if it doesn't apply because it's in the Old Testament. But here's a thought for you. As a pastor, if I was to break 9 out of the 10 commandments, I guarantee you I would be fired from my job. If I was to go murder someone, I'm sure I would get fired. If I was to lie or to cheat or to commit adultery or to steal, I'm sure that I would lose my job. However, the Sabbath command, if I as a pastor am going to break that commandment, if I'm going to hustle hard, if I'm just going to hit the grind, if I'm going to work for 70 hours just to produce some sort of success in ministry, I actually probably won't get fired, and instead, I actually might get a raise. How weird is that? We've taken rest and we've taken Sabbath, this gift that God actually gives us, and we've rejected it as if somehow we're too good for it. Sabbath is a great spiritual discipline. Now, the fourth one is simplicity. And once again, I think, so a lot of you probably thought simplicity, is that a spiritual discipline? Well, listen. Everywhere you go nowadays, whether you're driving in your car, walking down the street, walking by a bus stop, you see advertisements, you see media. When you open your phone, you go on social media. When you watch TV, well, now when you watch TV, you can skip commercials or whatever, but we live in this world that is constantly speaking to us and telling us that we must accumulate things, that we must have, we must have, we must have. And the spiritual discipline of simplicity says, you know what? I'm actually content where I am. I actually don't need that. I actually don't have to have that like this commercial says I do. It's contentment. And you know what? When we rush, when we feel like we need to have these things, when we feel like we need to go out and purchase these things, and if we don't get this thing, we're not going to be cool enough, or if we don't have this current trend, then we won't fit in. That produces hurry. That produces a pace in life that is unsustainable, because guess what? The world is always changing. Trends are always changing. If you're constantly trying to keep up, you are going to be sorely disappointed because you can't. Simplicity says, I'm satisfied. I'm content where I'm at. I don't need much. I'm content with what I have. It's a spiritual discipline. And so here's these 4 things: silence, solitude, Sabbath, simplicity. Now, some of you are probably saying, now, Alan, like, what are you doing? I'm already busy enough. I'm already going crazy, pulling my hair out in life. Now you're telling me I have to add these 4 things? Well, no, I'm not. I'm saying these 4 things are absolutely important and absolutely imperative if you want to learn how to slow your life down. And the truth is, you can't create more time. So how do you add these things to your life? Well, I guess something's going to have to give. Something else is going to have to go. To say yes to something, sometimes you got to say no to another thing. Now, here's a couple quick tips on how you can add some of these things to your life. How many of us have phones? Probably everybody in the room watching has a phone. How many times do you open your phone and go instantly to social media? Statistically, most of us spend at least 2 hours a day on social media. Now, are you telling me that you cannot cut that in half to 1 hour? That you can't carve out 1 hour a day from your social media time spent and spend it maybe in silence, in solitude? If you can't combine some of that time and create a day off in your week where you can just cease and rest, I think you can. What about Netflix? What about Prime Video, Crave, all those streaming services? Are you telling me that, you don't maybe spend a little too much time watching those things? Cobra Kai, am I right? And so I'm fairly confident that for almost everybody viewing this, that you can make time for these spiritual disciplines, and that as you do, they're going to help you live this slower pace in life. And I want you to imagine as you begin to discuss this maybe in your group, what could your life look like if you could just foster this pace that is slow and steady? I wish you guys all the best in this. It's not easy. I'm not a master. I'm still learning it too. But God bless you as you begin to pursue a slow and steady life with Jesus. See ya.